joining us now, Steve Moore, the chief economist of the Heritage Foundation, Skyping in from Washington. Steve, it's great to have you here on America's Forum.
Yeah, great to be with you.
So give us a tax tutorial. What's the difference in corporate rates between Switzerland and the U.S.?
Well, this is a big, major problem that almost all policy makers should really recognize, which is the United States now has the highest corporate tax rate in the world. In fact, I wrote a piece this weekend for the 4th of July making the point that anyone who supports our 35% corporate tax rate is almost unpatriotic, because it's sending jobs overseas to countries like Singapore and countries like Taiwan and countries like Indonesia and Switzerland and other countries that have lower rates, because tax rates matter and investment flows to those countries on balance that have lower tax rates. So we have got to do something about fixing our corporate tax system. And this is the third company, by the way, major iconic American company in the last month or so that has talked about moving out of the United States. Pfizer has been doing some investigating about moving to Ireland. You also had Medtronic, which is a major medical manufacturing company, a multi-billion-dollar company that is going to move to Ireland. We're not going to have any corporations or jobs left in this country if we don't do something about our corporate tax rate.
And as you mentioned, Steve, that you wrote a piece over the weekend, my words, not yours, for July 4th, suggesting it's unpatriotic if we fail to reform the corporate tax rate. There's another point of view. A recent op-ed in the New York Times by Paul Krugman, and want to go to this. He writes of Kansas Governor Sam Brownback's decision to slash income tax in order to jumpstart an economic boom. Krugman says Kansas isn't booming. He writes, quote, "In fact, its economy is lagging both neighboring states and America as a whole. Meanwhile, the state's budget has plunged deep into deficit, provoking a Moody's downgrade of its debt." How would you respond to Mr. Krugman's analysis of what is going on in the heartland there in Kansas?
First of all, the big picture on taxes in states is as I note in my book with Arthur Laffer, it's called The Wealth of States, is we talk about how, red states that are cutting taxes are doing significantly better than blue states like my home state of Illinois and California, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, states like that are raising taxes. And this is indisputable that companies and employers are moving out of high tax states into low tax states. That's why Texas and Tennessee and Arizona and Utah and states like that are doing so well economically. Now, Kansas just recently did a tax cut, as you correctly point out. They put that into effect at the beginning of this year. So far, the results are pretty good. They've actually had decent job growth. And look, let's face it, Kansas is not California in terms of its weather and its beaches and so on. But you are finding some growth impact from those tax cuts. It's still a little early to tell. They've only had the tax cut in place for 6 months. But Paul Krugman is wrong. I mean, the fact is, states that are cutting their taxes are doing significantly better, almost twice as many new jobs as states that are raising taxes.
Well, speaking of jobs, you made mention of the book that you've just written. You also, in addition to dealing with taxation, you talk about states with right-to-work laws. And Barry Goldwater used to say about Arizona, "I believe people have a right to join a union, but they have a right not to join a union and to work essentially union-free." Your take on what unionization or perhaps right to work means to economic expansion? We've got about 1 minute and 30 seconds left.
Look, I don't have a problem with unions. I think unions are fine. I just don't think American workers should be forced to join the union. About half the states force workers in a union shop to join the union, and about half are what we call right-to-work states that allow workers not to join the union, the right to not associate with the union. And we found there's about 2 to 3 times more job growth in right-to-work states because businesses don't want to locate in areas where people are compelled to join the union.
Steve Moore, we appreciate your labors as you write on economics and take a look at the economic scene there as chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, and that book that you co-authored with our friend Arthur Laffer, an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of states. Stephen, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good to have Stephen Skyping in from Washington, D.C. I was honored. You know what happened last week, Miranda?
Yeah.
John Bogman even quoted me quoting Milton Friedman. And
Wow.
what is that economic law?
Maybe you're rubbing off on me. If you want less of something, tax it more.
That's what happens.
If I start quoting either one of these guys, I'm just saying.
Well, I think that it would work out quite well. But what do you think at home? Whether it's our observations or Miranda's or others like Stephen Moore, we'd love to hear from you. Why don't you tweet us your comments at NewsmaxTV, hashtag America's Forum. Our address is connect@newsmaxtv.com. And don't forget Facebook. We're coming right back.